Hello and welcome to New Toy Tuesdays, an increasingly neglected corner of this channel where I play with something new and exciting. It's been over a year since I last pooed out a video in this format, and the last one involved a massive robot penis. Still, I'm rather pleased today to have this thing trapped in my wanking talons. The Hioki 3490 Analogue Insulation and Resistance Tester. Yes, your eyes and ears are not deceiving you. This thing is Analogue, albeit with the internationalised spelling, we Brits preferring the illogical spelling with an additional UE tacked onto the end of the word. But what do we know? We only invented the fucking language. Never mind, I'll forgive Hioki in this case because they're a Japanese firm and this instrument isn't really made for our rain-soaked corner of the planet. That's not to say you'd have to import one, should you want one. And I sourced mine from Farnell, which seems to be about the only UK retailer with ready stock and next working day delivery. But why, in a digital world and with an array of better featured multifunction testers at my disposal, would I even want an Analogue flavour? That's the British flavour with the U in it, not the internationalised flavour, you understand. But I digress. Surely we're thinking Analogue equals cranky old-fashioned shit, no? Is Analogue not analogous to comparing the advanced features of a modern Metral to a hand-cranked Megger of yesteryear? Well, I wanted this example quite because it is Analogue and therefore a rare beast on this grim island. That's not so much the case down under, it seems, and it was while perusing Dave Willman's YouTube channel that I came across the existence of this rather cute little item and figured I had to have one in my own collection. Other Aussie Sparks I have seen using similar instruments, such as the Kairitsu 3132A, so these are presumably popular around the Antipodean end of the planet. Why? I can't say. Perhaps Dave Willman can do a video about the test instruments in that neck of the woods. He's certainly talked about this one before, and now I'm ripping him off and stealing his viewers by talking about it on here. Sorry, Dave. First, let me give a little introduction to the thing. It comes in this rather nutty sliding hard case. It comes with two leads and two probes, each with detachable safety tips, but rather curiously it comes with just one clip, which is a bit cheap. Selecting a range gives a battery health indication, this unit taking 4 supplied AA batteries. The LED obviously turns red as the batteries start to fail, and we have a beautiful white backlight. I'm very much liking that. There's the go button, which when pressed shows a voltage present or test underway warning light, and there are a couple of adjustment knobs on here that I'll get to later. In terms of toolbox space, you're looking at around 17.5 centimetres by 15 centimetres with a depth of around 5 centimetres. That's the British centimetres with the RE, not the Americanised version with the ER, of course. But to answer my earlier question of Analogue perhaps being perceived as old-fashioned and cranky compared to the digital displays of today, well, I beg to differ. Analogue has an advantage that I will eventually get to. But first, some preamble. Oh, come now, these new toy videos always did prove wildly unpopular. If you want me to stop now, then I'll do so. Is that what you want? Is it? Yeah. Okay then, let me introduce you to the Radio Shack Analogue Multi-Tester, complete with original box. Oh look, they spelled Analogue correctly despite Radio Shack being an American brand. But then this harks back to the days where manufacturers localised their wares for their target market, unlike today where the lowest common denominator applies and internationalised English passes everywhere. This unit was given to me by John Bagley, so a shout out to him for that, but this is very close to the instrument I myself was using in the late 80s and early 90s as an electronics hobbyist. Mine was just branded differently. Back then, analog meters were more prevalent and cheaper than their digital counterparts, although I did covet digital equipment as it looked smarter and more high-tech futuristic. Sadly, my pocket money of the day wouldn't extend to such toys. Nonetheless, this is a fine and well-featured instrument, and I present it here because I wanted to show you its mirrored display. To calibrate the thing, you would look at it dead on so that the needle and its reflection were 1 when on the 0 mark, ensuring you could make an adjustment to 0 with some accuracy. Twiddling this screw sets the needle if it's drifted off. This unit also has a transistor checker built in, which is completely off topic, but if I switch it to such, then by inserting a transistor such as this BFY51 NPN component, getting the emitter base and collector correctly orientated, you can see by the flashing green light that this has been identified as an NPN transistor, and that said transistor is healthy. Rather wonderful stuff, and jolly handy I used to find that feature too. But I digress. I took this down from its new home on my shelf of wondrous shite merely to show that mirrored display, something the Hioki doesn't have, which is a little surprising. Zero adjustment for this, for the IR and voltage scales, is performed in the same way with this screw adjustment, with the manual requiring you to achieve alignment by looking at it directly on and getting the needle to pass through the middle of the infinity legends printed on the scale. I mentioned there was an advantage to the presentation of an analog scale over a digital readout, and the keyword there is scale. For all the functions of this instrument, or any other analog tester like the Radio Shack multimeter we were just looking at, the limits of the test function are defined before our eyes thanks to the background scale. For voltage, for example, here is 0 at the needle rest position, and here is 600 volts, which is the maximum reading. If I connect to a supply, we don't just get a reading, we get a location position across the scale, which helps us to visualise the magnitude of what we're measuring. Back when I was a student at Coventry Technical College in 1991, I was assigned a project to describe how an analogue vehicle speedometer works. It turned out to be rather interesting. I sourced the speedo out of an old 70s Mini from the scrapyard and observed that the mileage readings weren't linearly spaced throughout. To account for mechanical variances at lower speeds, the markings were spaced closer together, as you can see on this image, where the gap between 0 and 10 is smaller than the gap between 10 and 20. There was also the pin, which stopped the pointer moving anti-clockwise when reversing. I also recall the instrument binnacle was always illuminated in green or orange, as these were considered as easier colours. That's the British colours with a U, but yes, easier colours on tired eyes when driving at night, rather than the harshness a white backlight would produce. Interesting how the last two cars I've owned have had largely white displays, so I guess the common sense of 30 plus years ago is outweighed by the pursuit of what looks flash and cool today. What a world we live in. But to get back on point, not many vehicles had digital speed readouts back then. However, one reason why analog speedometers are popular, and the reason why they remain today on many modern vehicles, is that seeing where the pointer is pointing helps your mind's eye to appreciate where on the scale of stationary to speeding you're currently sat at. A digital readout loses that sense of scale as it provides an absolute number without a control reference. One can lose track of the magnitude of a displayed number if there's no background scale to compare and contrast to. A Geiger counter measuring radiation is perhaps a good example. Imagine if you were a grunt at the site of a nuclear plant during a meltdown, and although you didn't know what level of radiation was safe, you had managed to grab an analog Geiger counter with a simple scale. That would show if you were likely to live, or if you were about to sprout 2 heads and 3 penises like some kind of freaking mutant, and it would mean more to you than a straight digital numerical readout could convey in the miserable minutes before your bollocks drop off. That's an extreme and somewhat ridiculous example perhaps. Nonetheless, an analogue presentation helps one to visualise the magnitude of the reading under test. That's why we like things like analogue clocks. A digital readout of 1926 is all well and good, but a quick glance at a clock face gives us a visual interpretation of the hour and how far past it we're at, without our having to know the exact numbers involved. The Hioki can read up to 600 volts AC, and this is the full-scale deflection of this instrument on this setting. I've used the term full-scale deflection, or FSD, in previous videos when talking about the maximum reading an instrument can display, usually when talking of the digital instruments in my collection, but the term refers back to analogue instruments such as this, whose needle would physically deflect across a background display as we're seeing here. On a 240 volt supply as I am, we can see we're over a quarter of the way toward full-scale deflection, and the red scale at the bottom allows us to read off that 240 volt present. This instrument is perhaps a little unusual in that the needle sweeps from right to left. Most other analogue instruments such as multimeters sweep from left to right. Stock images of the Kyoritsu seem to place its needle on the left, but I don't know if that's just the stock image placing the needle where people expect to see it. One brand of MFT which recognises the advantage of showing a sense of scale is Megger. The 15 and 17 series Megger instruments provide a digital readout of absolute numbers, but they do so with a rendition of an analogue counterpart. If I switch my trusty 1552 into voltage mode, I'm again presented with a scale from 0 to 600 volts. When plugged into a voltage source, a virtual needle travels up the scale from left to right. So not only do I get an absolute readout of what the measured voltage is, but I can see that on the literal grand scale of things, it's almost halfway to the maximum the instrument can show. The Megger utilises this feature on other settings too, so switching to continuity gives me a display with a full scale deflection of 10 ohms. If I put it onto this 5 ohm cal card, we can see we're about halfway there. Similarly, we get a visual display on insulation resistance. This time the virtual needle travels from right to left, like on the Hioki, and although the scale starts at 0.01 and goes up to 1000, if we run a test at 20 megaohm, you can see it deflects quite far along to the left. This is because the scale on this setting is logarithmic, where the numbers aren't evenly spaced as they have been on the previous linear readouts. Here it is skewed towards the lower numbers, and the reason for that is because a low IR is something to worry about. A reading in the tens or hundreds of million ohms isn't really a concern, so we don't need to focus on it too much, but something below 20 mega ohm is more worthy of our attention when testing. That's why, despite the scale going from 0.01 to 1000, a 20 mega ohm reading will see a deflection a good 3/4 of the way across, and a reading of just 0.5 mega ohm gets a whole quarter plus way along the scale. Kudos to Megger. The analogue representation here is a fine example of interface design. But for a video about the Hioki Koki, I sure haven't shown the friggin' thing much. Let's have a play with it now using both the cal card and my Billy Bollocks insulation resistance demonstrator that I built for another video a few years ago, and we'll put this fucker through its paces. On resistance we have two ranges, 3 ohm and 30 ohm. The scale we're looking at for resistance testing is the blue one, second from bottom. The markings on this scale go from 0 to 3, but if you're on the 30 ohm range, you'd multiply the numbers by 10. Beyond 3 is the infinity symbol, which doesn't mean you have infinite resistance, of course, merely that it's off-scale high for what this black and blue baby can show. Let's start on the 3 ohm range, and I'm going to join my probes together to ensure this is zeroed. I can either press the measure button for a short test, or I can flip it up for continuous testing. I need to use the adjustment knob here to align the needle to 0, then I know it's ready for testing. This is where 2 clips and a continuity buzzer would be nice. If I were using this to identify wiring, I could leave it clipped on at one end as I join cores at the other, but never mind. Now that it's zeroed, I'll use the cal card to put on 0.5 ohms, jolly good. 1 ohm, let's try 2 ohm, looks like it's all reading okay, and 5 ohm of course is off scale for this instrument at this setting. Switching to the 30 ohm range means we have to adjust our 0 point once again. Oh yes, those with auto-ranging digital meters that hold their last 0 point will already have at least one eyebrow raised, I'm sure. Applying a 5 ohm test and the needle points to 0.5 on the blue scale, and we must remember to multiply that by 10 to convert it to the reading we want, of course. Moving on to insulation resistance, and we have a choice of 250, 500 or 1000 volts. The selector switch has a step between the 500 and 1000 volt settings to mitigate the chance of accidental selection of that top range. Again, we have a logarithmic display, the blue scale at the top for the 250 and 500 volt settings, the red scale beneath it if you're playing with the 1000 volt option. Running a test with the probes disconnected means the needle doesn't move and remains on the infinite off-scale position. Shorting the probes sends the needle flying to 0 at the opposite end of the scale. Looking at that top blue scale, although it goes from 0 to 100, I can see that just 20 mega ohm ought to get us over 3/4 of the way across from the 0 position. If I stick my probes on the cal card, we do indeed get the reading we expected. 1 meg ought to get us halfway across and toward the centre position. That's the British centre with an RE instead of an ER, by the way, and it does indeed do so. Like the Megger, this scale is skewed to the lower readings that would be of more interest to us during inspection and testing. The 1000 volt setting also has a logarithmic scale, this time from 0 to 4000, and the 20 mega ohm test point on the cal card gets us nearly to the halfway point of that. Let's try it out on my Billy Bollocks here. This apparatus has two cables that some DIYing asshole has put a screw through. That screw has damaged the brown plastic core insulation in each cable, but it isn't necessarily in contact with the copper. In imaginary land, each cable is on a different circuit here, and their respective RCBOs are tripping off when power is applied. I'm going to nab a second clip from my Megger here, as Hioki are too tight to supply to, and I'm going to zero the 3 ohm setting. Placing the clips on the brown wires shows no continuity. Okay, so let's put a little EMF behind that and switch it to IR at 250 volts. And there we have it, a bit of EMF and it collapses to zero. What's happening here is that the metal screw is not in copper to copper contact with both cores of those brown wires. If it were, then the continuity test would pick that up. What has happened though is that the screw has chewed away most of the insulating material protecting these two cores. We've only a sliver of plastic and or air keeping the metallic screw away from the live parts. When a bit of welly is put behind it, such as 250 volts or above, this voltage can break down and overcome the resistance of that remaining sliver of insulation, and current can pass. The only reason an IR test picks this up where a continuity test does not is because a continuity test on instruments such as this is maybe 5 volt at 200 milliamp, and that's not enough to break down the fart box bit of resistance remaining. If you're looking for this sort of fault without the right equipment, let's say you're armed with just a multimeter, it won't show up. You need a pressure test, which is exactly what an IR test is. This wiring needs to be stressed to portray the presence of the fault. So anyway, that's the Hioki 3490, a lovely thing, and no doubt you will see it in action in future videos. Would I kick my Megger or Metrol out of bed for it? No, of course not. It lacks the features and functions I've come to rely on. 30 ohms isn't a big enough range. If I'm testing an underfloor heating mat, then that can be in the hundreds of ohms. For the space it takes up, it doesn't offer RCD testing, resistance auto-ranging, one-button nulling, audible continuity testing, DC voltage reading, or loop testing. My Megger 1552 is the next most basic instrument I have, yet it offers a one-stop shop for all I need day to day. Other testers such as the Metrol are more fully featured again, but with additional whistles and bells I don't often require. Of course, the Hioki is a fraction of the cost of a more feature-rich MFT, so for someone who only undertakes initial verification or basic fault finding, it perhaps has all you need. It's not my favourite MFT, that's a British favourite by the way, with a U very much included. Nonetheless, I find the Hioki to be a very pleasing thing. But then, I'm a sad twat. Well, once again, another, I was going to say exciting video, but this one really wasn't. Where's the sun gone, Marsh? It's all gone a bit wintry.
I've come to work without a fleece because it was sunny when I left.
Indeed, yes, we're back on the van.
Back on the van.
Still got this stupid tickly cough, but otherwise I'm not contagious anymore. Or at least Nige hopes not, anyway. And what do you think about that? 3 videos in 1 week. That's after
I know,
a month
it
of doing
shows
nothing.
what you can do with COVID. Yeah,
you can piss around and poo out some really shit videos.
Yeah.
So,
oh no, I did enjoy your points of view style Greek video. I enjoyed. I watched all the latest.
I enjoyed
videos.
being in the Greek sun, mate. Unlike this.
I could tell.
Anyway, time for some beery shout-outs. And quite a few generous contributions over the last few videos. Starting with Steve Ayers, who is a plumber. A dirty plumber, commenting on our videos.
Yeah.
Oh. But yeah, Steve works at, or is Gasman Direct.
He just Gashman Direct.
Oh,
Gashman.
Well, plumbers, they get all the fanny, don't they?
Oh.
But yes, Gasman Direct in Bognor. If we're ever in Bognor, we shall look him up and let his tyres down. But thank you for the contribution, Steve. Dave.rda, who says we're doing a public service by making videos such as we make. Don't know about that. So he says we're the equivalent of the Green Cross Code Man, which
I think I saw that comment. I did see a
Yeah,
comment,
yeah.
yes.
I suppose you do like standing at the side of the road and holding the hands of children, don't you?
I did also see a comment about me related to that in there. Yes.
Yes. Nige still has his
I
paedophile
saw
glasses. He hasn't.
Yeah, I've took them off so I can see this.
I've had to
but
sit through his.
I'm supposed to be picking up new glasses today, which I'm not sure are any better, but they don't make me look like Eddie Hitler anymore, I'm afraid.
I've had to sit through his optician story in the van on the way here this
exciting
morning.
optician
And it's,
story.
yeah, I wish I still had the COVID, to be honest. Chris Dancer. Biker Chris, who weighs 82 kilograms.
What's that in real money? In stones and pounds?
That is real money. What do you weigh?
No.
You must be about 105 kilograms.
I haven't weighed myself in a while, but it's about 12.5 stone. I got to drop another stone, I think.
Are you sure you don't interfere with children?
I've always done it in stone. Always done it in stone.
Ollie says, get well soon. Thank you, Ollie. Just got to get rid of the stupid fucking annoying cough. The oldest apprentice in the Northwest, who says that it's genuinely interesting to see how a professional deals with some dickhead shite work. I can assure you no professionals have been involved in the making of any of these videos.
But plenty of dickheads.
Quite so. Our man Chuck Kirchner, aka Jolly Engineer, our man in the States, Chucky, who has insisted that one of his beery contributions be donated towards the wife for having to put up with me over the last...
Isn't it wine for the wife? White wine for the lady, as Al would say.
She would have a glass of red, if indeed I followed your instructions and gave her such.
Yeah, no.
But I won't. That's going to just get pissed up at the wall by me. John Taylor Electrical Services says hi, and John is our one and only promotion to the whores list on this video.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And going back to Virgins, we have Miles, otherwise known as Libc.
Libc. C library.
There you go. Yes. Programming reference for all you nerds out there. He says to take Nige somewhere nice.
He won't. Unless this is counted as not.
Here we are.
Yeah.
In a co-op car park, drinking a rather nice latte beverage.
It's not bad. Not bad.
We have had two other contributions, which have gone off the screen. The YouTube have activated some kind of thanks feature, which I hadn't seen before, and apparently allows you to make contributions should you be of a mind through the YouTube platform rather than through the Buy Me a Coffee platform. But of course that means Google managed to get more money. So they can never have enough money, can they?
Take a cut, obviously.
Yes, but yes, that is a perfectly valid way for beers to be bought, should you wish to do so. And the first person to avail themselves of this new feature was jktism, who was a spark in Sweden. One of our international audience.
Interestingly, that's the noise I make at the end of masturbation.
Well, I don't know, is that an age thing, or is that just the ice cubes coming out the end?
I think it's the pills I take. It's down to the pill.
Things you didn't need to know right here during our breakfast. And finally, Philip Sharp, who was also contributed via the YouTube platform. Philip Sharp says thanks.
Oh, thanks.
So there you go. I've got two platforms to try and keep an eye on now. If anybody ever feels that they want to contribute any further to us, and they might not, and who can blame them? Because this is all a load of absolute shit.
We need contributions after you taking your man flu week off.
I know, yeah, we need to make some fucking money, otherwise this business is going to be done quite soon. Yeah. Just a little moan about YouTube while we're onto YouTube making changes. I noticed they've changed their interface this week. Most of my interaction with YouTube is via the PC rather than via the mobile phone or other platforms. It's via the PC because obviously I want to be, if I'm replying to people's messages, I'm going to be doing that on a proper keyboard, and it's just easier to keep an eye on that way. YouTube have decided that they don't want people to, whenever an advert comes on a video, I have a habit of just sort of scrolling that off and having a look at reading the comments if I'm watching a video and an advert's come on. YouTube have got wise to that and have now changed their interface so that if you want to view comments or if you want to view the description, you have to click on them and then they appear in the sidebar. It stops the window being scrollable so that the video content is always there and you cannot get away from the adverts. That's just the Google being the Google. Unfortunately for me, it does mean that, because I try and keep on top of comments. I try and, you can't answer all comments on all videos all the time, but, I try and be fairly responsive to the comments, especially on a new video for the first sort of 24, 48 hours. But it all means it's all been squashed up into the side of the screen now, which means it's harder to view the comments and harder to reply to them because you're working in this tiny window as opposed to, well, that's just usually they don't think about these things. It's not they're not interested in you interacting with your audience. They're interested in you viewing the adverts. So that's a bit of a pisser, but that's just YouTube being YouTube. They're making another change as well. At the end of this month, they're switching on all sub counts. Now, I turned off the sub count a year ago because I think too much gets read into the sub counts. There's too many sort of...
What's the sub count? How many subscribers?
Yeah. There's too many people gauging the worth of a channel by how many subs they've got.
How can a new channel get started if people look and say, oh, one sub and...
Now, I get why they're doing it. They're doing it because there are too many people who are making fake channels purporting to be somebody else and then deliberately hiding the sub count because they don't really have the numbers. But I think there should still be an option for legitimate verified channels to be able to opt out of that, because I think it's a distraction. And I also feel it's a bit of a pain in the arse because for a channel like ours, it's an alternative channel. It's not a mainstream channel. We're an alternative to mainstream. We don't
appeal to...
Yes, we're not supposed to appeal to everyone. If we had a high sub count, we'd probably be doing it wrong. So yes, our sub count plateaued a long time ago and has stayed static, and it kind of gets a bit depressing to see in a way, even though it's quite understandable. So I turned it off a year ago. So I don't want to see the fucking thing. I don't want to keep an eye on it. I don't want to know it. But YouTube are now forcing that to go on at the end of the month to be public. And people have said to me before, we appreciate you not showing the sub count because it means that you're not trying to aim for just getting the numbers in. But so when it reappears, that's nothing to do with us. That's just YouTube saying, well, we're going to force you to show it whether you like it or not. And I don't like it. It also means you get websites sort of tracking you and tracking what the channel's worth wildly and accurately.
I think if there was massive subs, I'd be trying too hard on these videos. As it is, I don't try at all. I
know you've had nothing to do with this one. Again, you're just here to drink the bloody coffee.
I'd just be me,
But I think as well, although we have a low sub count, relatively speaking, I think that we have a certain quality of subscriber.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
We have a little family of regulars here.
Yeah.
We don't get shit posts. We don't get spammy, ridiculous crap. We don't have to weed out comments. So you get some creators are accused of weeding out negative comments. Well, we don't weed anything out. We've even got it switched on so that you can supposedly say what you like. We don't have anything that's supposedly held for restriction.
YouTube would always have a say in that.
YouTube's still a bit weird about that, yeah. But the settings on this channel are, if you want to say something, you say it. If you want to say something critical of us, and it's a fair criticism, we'll take it up the arse. We're big enough and ugly enough to take it up the arse.
He does take it up the arse.
But if you want to if someone wants to come along and just have a plain pop, we'll have a pop back. If you want to come on into our space and and call us a pair of twats, well, we'll either take that as a joke or come at you. Yeah. If we think it's meant with malice, we're going to come back at you. We're not just going to delete it or anything. It's but as long as you can cope with us giving back what gets dished out. But we don't get a lot of that, and I think we've got a quality of subscriber despite the fact that the numbers stay static. But the numbers are going down. I did have a look at this week, and after I put out the last couple of videos, the numbers have dropped. So it just goes to show that there's a core audience here. This isn't a mainstream channel, and I'm just basically covering my ass for the embarrassment of when this fucking number appears in a couple of weeks' time.
I don't know what the subscriber count is.
Same number as when we tuned out of the sub count a year ago. It just hasn't fucking moved. So that's that. So that's me moaning about YouTube. YouTube do like to make these stupid changes.
Hey, if we wanted massive subscribers, we'd sit on a sofa and comment on woke Twitter feeds. That's thousands of people doing it. Or funny videos of people falling down. Maybe we should sit on a sofa and laugh at funny Aussie man. Look at his, look at his subscriber count. And,
Not familiar with that, but speaking of Aussie men, thanks again to Wilman Electrical for the unintentionally giving me the idea for this video. What did you think of the Hioki 3499?
Is that the Hioki Koki test?
I've already done
test
that joke in this video, haven't I? You haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about because he hasn't even seen it.
It's the Koki model from Hioki.
And hasn't had anything to do with this video once again.
Well, you've been infectious, so I've been nowhere near you.
Maybe I still am.
I can't do another week off work. I mean,
I know.
earn a pittance as it is, and I'm getting bugger all.
I suppose we
this
better
month.
go out now and actually earn some money.
Yeah, I've drunk my coffee. Well, nearly. Let's bugger off.
So thank you for your contributions. You actually kept us afloat
Thank you.
this past week.
Yes.